The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Sports Channel. For more information about our network and to check our additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericasports.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
All right, you heard that music. You listen to the show, Ray Ellis Sports, on the Voice America Network. I'm in Phoenix, living like it matters. What matters to me today? You know, something always matters to me every time I do the show. And what matters to me today, it is Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. Today is January 15th. Am I right? I know I'm right. And I just... You know, of all the times that I take the opportunity to pay tribute to somebody, I normally just save it for the members of the fraternity. But today is something special. Today is a day that there would be no members of the fraternity if somebody didn't stand up and fight for the opportunity for me to be a part of a league that didn't really want me, didn't really want a lot of people that look like me. You know, Dr. King fought for a lot of people that if they were a little different than you and you didn't want them to be a part of your group, of your country, of your city, of the world. Man gave his life for that, to change things, and to let you know that God created man equal, and that all men were created equal, and should have the opportunity for life, liberty, and a picket fence. And so if you wanted to play football and they didn't want you to play football, Dr. King didn't feel that was the right thing to do. And he thought that one day that all God's children, whatever it was that we wanted to do, would get along. And we would be judged by the content of our character and not necessarily our skin. And so we're going to take time out today. And what we're going to do, we're going to pay honor and tribute and just homage to a man who gave his life so that I could do what I'm doing today. And certainly so those of you could come out there and enjoy the things I used to do on the field where I used to play on. Because there was a time where I couldn't play on that field. There was actually a time where I couldn't play the position that I played. So in order for me to pay honor to a man who fought so long, and we still fight for some of the things that he was fighting for us when he died in 1968, I have a moment of silence for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. All right. Happy birthday, Dr. King. And, you know, as I said, you know, it's just a shame that, you know, the fact of the matter is we still fighting for civil rights, you know, all around the world, not just here in the United States of America. And athletes, you know, it's, you know, I'm finding it very hard that even today, you know, quarterbacks, you know, that are minorities that are asking, you know, what does it feel like to be a black quarterback? It's a quarterback. When you line up under center, you put the jersey on. When you put the jersey on, that's your color. You know, the guys with the white on are trying to tackle the guys with the black on. The guys with the black on trying to tackle the guys with the white on. It ain't your skin color, it's your jersey color. And so I just wish that, you know, some of us in the media could get over it and get past it. But there's times where we're not allowed. And I think a lot of it got to do with, you know, sometimes back in the day they used to say if it's too loud, you're too old. I think there's a whole lot of old-ass people that's involved in this, that's just keeping this thing going, that they really don't even need to let it go. But until they let it go, and everybody thinks the playing field is level, then we still got to fight a little bit. You got to fight for what you think is right. You got to be willing to fight. And sometimes you got to step up and you got to fight for somebody else. You got to be big brother. And you got to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to let you do that. And that's so the civil rights movement, there were people who were not, let's say, black or minorities that were white, and they stood up for us. We appreciated that. There were people who were not gay or lesbian, but they stood up for the gays and lesbian. There were people that perhaps maybe were some not Mexican that stood up for the Mexicans. You know, so I don't care what it is or who it is. Sometimes you got to fight somebody else's fight so you can get your blessing. So don't be scarred. That's what they say in St. Louis, Missouri. Don't be scarred. Fight for somebody else, especially fight for their right. So I know I'm expecting a friend to join me because there's some things going on in some other parts of the world. And they still dealing with some issues just like we do. And I believe my man Anthony Gentle is on the line with me, calling me from London. Anthony, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Ray.
Man, Anthony, I appreciate, I know when I reached out to you, and I appreciate the fact that you and I had a chance to have some dialogue on your show. And by the way, the name of your show, Anthony, go ahead and give us a shout out about your show up there, so everybody knows now. We didn't. This is worldwide. He's in London.
Yeah, well, I'm on YouTube, and I got podcasts going, and that'll be www.youtube.com/athletic intelligence, and everyone can check me out there, and the great people that have been helping me.
And that's a real accent. That's not a fake accent. He's not acting. That accent is for real. And I'm sure he probably feels like I have one, but but strangely enough, I don't think I do. But let me just say this. I know what you and I do agree on. We had a great time on your show. But after I was on your show, it just surprised me because, again, we play a different kind of football than you do. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. But what surprised me about what was happening in football, the way they play it in London and other parts of the world, and we play it like that here in the United States, too. We got a pretty good team.
Yeah.
But there appears that I believe it was in Italy or someplace where there was a young man that stood up and said he just wasn't going to take it anymore because racial slurs were being thrown at him.
Right. Kevin Prince Boateng of AC Milan, they were playing a game. They're a top division team, and they were playing a Division 2 team, and the fans started with that racist chant.
Please go ahead and explain to the audience what the issue of concern was as they started those racial chants.
Yeah, and the players just, that young man felt for his safety. He's a young man from Ghana, and he just thought, this isn't right. I don't play this game to receive this type of abuse. And he made a stand, and he picked up the ball, or he kicked it into the stands. He took his jersey off and walked off the field. And what was great about that was his teammates, they followed.
That's the part that I love, because I just, I don't know if you heard me as I opened the show, but I said sometimes in order for us to receive our blessings, we got to take on somebody else's fight. And there's no way in the world that the rights that we now receive here in terms of civil rights in the United States of America would have been received if it weren't for people like Dr. Martin Luther King. And he wanted this to be a thing that, went across all boundaries, not just this country, the world. Because he believed, and I believe that every man is created equal. I got a chance to meet Bishop Tutu, of course, from South Africa, and I got a chance to travel to South Africa. I want to shout out to my family and friends, of course, that I met over there in South Africa. My family, my sister-in-law, DeAndre, and her husband, Anthony Lewis, I'm going to give them full credit, gave a present to my wife and I. We got a chance to travel. But I have to say this. I am so proud of athletes because that's one thing I believe about sports. Sports is one of those things, and you may or may not agree with this, Anthony. I want to hear your opinion on this too, is that at least when you're on a team, you want to win. And you understand there's no doubt when you're on a team, or even if you're a fan of a team, you can see the difference in talent. And you know who is the more talented individual. And if it's all about winning, regardless of color of skin, you want the best player to put you in the best position to win. So you want that player on the field. And I'm just so happy that soccer, we call it soccer here, you guys call it football.
Yeah.
But these young men stood up for what is right. They didn't care. They may have forfeited the game by doing that. But I think it was more important to them than the game was what they wanted to stand for, and that is, this is our teammate. And so do you agree that sports sometimes gives us a platform where if used right, could be beneficial to society?
Most definitely. If people use it the right way and do the right things and say the right things, it's a great tool to make change happen. If you look at what this player's done now, if there's another game where this same incident happens, you might see a repeat. Another player is now not going to be so worried about, well, what's going to happen to me? It's like, no, I'm going to take a stand. I'm going to take this ball. I'm going to take my jersey off and I'm going to go back in the changing rooms. And maybe until they stop doing what they're doing or saying what they're saying. And if they don't, I'm going home, but we're going to make a change.
And, Anthony, one thing that I'm a little concerned about, in this country at least, is sometimes what can happen is once money comes into the picture, it kind of clouds our perspective in terms of, from a humanistic perspective, human nature, what we should sacrifice for another generation. And I was involved in 2 strikes when I played football in the National Football League, and those were sacrifices for future benefits for other players. We lost some money, we got some of it back, but we took a stand, and I know that's a different type of stand, but it's still the willingness to take a stand. I would tell you, were you shocked that an athlete today was willing to take a stand in terms of compensation? Is this a highly paid young man over there that took the stand, or was this a game that pay was not involved?
I think there's probably pay involved. I'm not too sure, but if you're playing for AC Milan, they're going to be paying you a decent wage. And I was impressed, let's say. There was a shock because you have had incidents like this periodically. Some leagues are doing a great job of making sure that this is being phased out the game or it's stopping. But to see a player do that, you got to be impressed, because if he did lose his wage, he's going on values here and saying, hey, I don't get paid to do this.
And let me ask you, in terms of the majority of people in the stands, would you say this was just an isolated incident, or was this that the visiting team, perhaps maybe where he was playing against, was it the majority of those fans who were, for lack of a better word, taunting him with these, racial gestures?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because when you look at different headlines and read different stories and watch it on the news, some were saying, well, it's just an isolated area of the stadium with the fans were chanting that abuse at him and his teammates. Others say, well, it was around different parts of the stadium. So I'm not too sure, but the one thing they did say is that there were fans who were very upset that this was happening. And I think there was almost trouble between the two groups because of the incident.
Yeah, and that makes it a little easier for you to accept in terms of just bringing that story, to the airwaves, to understand that perhaps maybe this was more of an isolated incident. But one thing, sometimes I'm confused when people, express their freedom of speech here in this country. And their rights of freedom to speak. I think sometimes they think they've paid, when they pay for a ticket, that they've paid for the opportunity. And actually, it's a privilege to say and do whatever you want to do to people in these athletic arenas, if you will. Is it that way in London? Do you think because you paid the price of a ticket that you have the right to say or do whatever sometimes our players here, things are thrown at them. Sometimes even our referees, people that, and you take, I don't care, whatever kind of widget you got, you throw things at them, you throw pop on them. We call it pop or soda, depending upon where you're from. A soft drink on them. You throw your hot dog at them. You throw whatever you want to, and you certainly throw mean-spirited words in their direction. Is it like that in other parts of the world? Do they think because they paid for the ticket, they have the freedom of speech and right to do and say whatever they want to these athletes?
Yeah, kind of. There's been a history with the game of football, soccer, of violence and hooliganism. And some countries have managed to get a hold on it and control and manage to identify those individuals involved or groups and ban them, from the stadiums. But there are those people that do think, hey, I can just come in here, do what I want. It's a group mentality. And one of the things that does happen, you talk about throwing objects, is players being hit by coins.
Yes.
And that's when you're playing a game, and you're out there, and it's not like, the game of American football where they've got a helmet on and hopefully it won't go through the visor or anything, or a face mask. But when you're a soccer player out there, if something's thrown, some object, that's it. You'll get cut, and it has happened.
Yeah, and that's one thing. And you can also lose an eye. You can lose an eye.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not sure that, when people, sometimes, and I don't want to say that you have to move those type of, let's say, enhanced soft drinks from those arenas. People have the right to enjoy an enhanced soft drink, if you will, an alcoholic beverage, if they want to at these arenas. But I think that, the level of which things, shoot up to in terms of just how these people behave. I don't know if they're intoxicated or if they're just mean-spirited. And let me ask you, in this particular case, do you think it was a sign of which, okay, this person was, maybe upset because this was a good player performing very well against their team, or this seemed more like racism? Were they mad at the other team? And if they were, because maybe perhaps they're winning and the player was doing well, we can understand that. But, sometimes the venom comes out and the racism reveals its real ugly head. And I think from what I read, this was more racism than it was a hatred for the other team.
Yeah, I'd lean towards what you're saying there, because, for a player to walk off, I think that players receive, as you know, in all sports, a lot of abuse on the field.
Yes.
And the opposition fans will always try and put the players off the game. But I think this player, maybe it was just a case of, you know what, I've had enough of it here in this game. I don't know exactly how long they played for before he walked off. But it also may be a case of he's experienced that in other games, in other arenas, and he said, no, it's time, I'm doing this.
Okay, I just want to say this, that, Dr. King died was assassinated in 1968. And here it is, this is, 2013. And so, when you look at that, that's a long time. Is there progress that's been made in London when you think about the way things used to be? And I don't know if they were as bad in London as they were in the United States of America in 1968, but just from the time that you spend on the earth, and you're a native there, that's your home. You've lived there your whole life. In terms of, people respecting people as human beings, has things gotten better, or does that racism continue to again show its ugly head from time to time, like it did at this ball game?
Yeah, I'd say things have improved. They have gotten better. There's always that underlying current and an issue that's there that may be unspoken, and it will show up in incidents, like you say, that will go on in the street. There'll be an attack or something, and depending on which part of the country, it can be, things can be okay and fine, but other places there's definite tension. But I would say things have improved, and I would like to see it improve more. But there's still work to be done in educating everybody to make that happen. And
we just want to be clear. Now, this incident that we're talking about did not happen in London. This, if I'm not mistaken, this was actually in Milan. Am I correct?
Yeah, well, I think it was in Italy. I'm not sure. I think it was at the opposing team. I'm not sure where they were.
Okay, so it was in Italy. So it did not happen in London. But my concern and the ask of that question about how and what's the temperature, if you will, there in London as it relates to racial relations, is because the National Football League is actually considering expansion. And London has been one of those places that they've consistently looked at, and there's been games there.
Right.
And that would be taken into consideration. I mean, no place other than Phoenix, Arizona knows how the National Football League feels about racial relations, because it for a while, it was the reason why they weren't able to attract the Super Bowl here in Phoenix, Arizona. But some things have gotten better over the years.
Right.
Let me ask you, regardless of racial relations or not, just how do you feel about perhaps maybe the National Football League having a presence there in London, and do you think we're close to that?
Well, we've had the series of international games. I think we're on game. We've had game of 5 or 6, and the following for the games is huge. And I know people will travel from. We sat next to some people from Boston when we went to the Patriots game, and people will come from wherever in Europe to see the game. So to fill the stadiums and have the seats, I say that can definitely happen. To have a franchise in London, that would be interesting. I don't know what would happen there, especially that franchises will, when they first come into the league, sometimes they struggle.
Yeah,
the fans still go to see that.
Yes, you are right about that. But I would say this. You would only have to, when you think about a season is 16 games, and perhaps maybe the team would be good enough that perhaps maybe they would make it into the playoffs. But chances are for the first few years, they perhaps would struggle. But you're talking about probably preseason 2 games, regular season 8 games. So you're talking about supporting the team for about maybe 10, 12 games a year at home. Certainly when they travel to the States, they would sell out. Do you think a stadium of 60,000 people could be filled for 12 games a year?
I think so.
See, that's not, when you look at it like that, that's a little different than, I know where you were going with that. We want a winning team, and, but what happens a lot of times, this certainly happens here in Arizona, or many times people come to see the opposing team and not necessarily the home team. So, for a long time that was happening here. So I'm sure you probably got fans that are there, that would welcome the home team. But like you said, when the Patriots come, they're going to go, probably when the 49ers come, they're going to go. Some of the older franchises, I would like to say that when the Browns came, that you guys might sell it out, but I don't know about that. In fact, they might ship the Browns. The Browns might be the team. They might ship over there again. But I tell you what, I'm certainly hoping that it can happen. Now, are you aware, Anthony, when's the next scheduled game? There was the Patriots there this year. When's the next scheduled game on the calendar? Do you know if there's another one next year?
They've got 2 games next year. We got the Vikings and the Steelers, if I'm correct, the 29th of September. And then a month later, we have Jaguars and the Niners.
Now, this is really interesting. So you already know who's coming there, which means they've done a tremendous job of marketing, because I don't even think, to my knowledge, the schedule hasn't even been released yet, but you know about those games already. So they're doing a tremendous job. Is there a demand for those tickets when they announce the games? Sometimes tickets, depending on what the event is, tickets can sell out instantly. Are there tickets still available? And how do people go about trying to get those tickets when those games come over there?
Well, you can get them from the NFL UK site online. There's various vendors that people can get their tickets from. They can go on the website. It's directly for the stadium that the games are played in. But going back to what you're saying about selling out, as far as I know, they're saying that the Steelers Vikings game is virtually sold out.
Yeah, and see, the Steelers, that's one of those franchises. When you talk about a storied franchise, that's probably what it is, the most successful franchise right now. Now, of course, the Patriots are teetering right along. They're trying to join that top ranking with them, and to either match or exceed the amount of Super Bowls. And I think that might be 6 or something of that nature. But the Minnesota Vikings, they've been bitten by the bug. They've been there so many times years ago. Couldn't get there and couldn't get it done. Adrian Peterson, of course, was, almost to the next level in the playoffs, and just had a great season coming back from that injury. But back in the day, they talk about, and we're going to get into this in the next half of the show, they talk about, running quarterbacks. But I'm going to tell you, there was a scrambling quarterback years ago, and I got to take you way back, years ago, who the quarterbacks today, they don't compare to the nightmare that this young man in his day, he was a young man, Fran Tarkenton. But talking about
Okay.
a real scram, that was somebody who was a scrambling quarterback. And Fran, when he scrambled, his intent was not to run. His intent was to buy time so that a receiver would find a way to get open. And more than not, they would. So, these guys today, they think they got a problem in trying to run down some of these quarterbacks. Man, they Fran Tarkenton would have gave them all kinds of headaches. But listen, we're going to take a break. I want you to make sure that you hang on there, Anthony. No more technical difficulties. But I got Anthony Gentle with me. Of course, he's calling in from London. And I was a guest on Anthony's show again. And your show again, Anthony, is?
That's www.youtube.com/athletic intelligence.
And you, of course, can go there and on demand to listen to Anthony's show. But we're going to take a break. You've been listening to Ray Ellis Sports on the Voice America Network. I'm in Phoenix, living like it matters. Happy birthday, Dr. King. Appreciate it.
Is a beauty. There's a fly ball deep right field. Back goes O'Neal. He's at the shot. Got it with 2.8 seconds left. To left. I don't care where they put him. This one is out of here.
From high school to the pros, we cover everything. Let your voice be heard. Voice America Sports.
So Andy Serling packed his bags, left the city, and is enjoying his temporary digs in Saratoga. But that won't stop us from bringing you Playing to Win, the best online handicapping show for serious horse players. Catch Andy and his great lineup of guests every week throughout the month of August on location from the beautiful Saratoga Racecourse. He and his guests are some of the best in the biz. They bring you new insights to making money, and they tell it like it is.
I'm 3-5-1 in this race, but the 3 is very much the one to beat. We're going to completely disagree on this race. I absolutely despise her, especially at 1-2.
And it's anything but the same old horse racing show.
This is a 9-horse field, but really there are 7 donkeys and 2 zebras.
Playing to Win with Andy Serling, a show seriously committed to making more money at the game, but with a personality.
This is a dunce cap horse for me. If this horse wins, next week I got the dunce cap on.
YouBet.com's Playing to Win, presented by the Daily Racing Form. Look for it the day before big race days, mostly Fridays. Find a complete schedule in the Daily Racing Form or click on Playing to Win at YouBet.com.
You may not know all their names, but you certainly know what they did. They helped make this game into what it is today. Now we can do more to help them. The NFL Alumni Association is proud to assist our retired players to help make their lives better today and tomorrow. To learn more, please visit NFLalumni.org.
Your internet flagship station for sports, Voice America Sports.
All right. You hear the music, you know the show. You listen to Ray Ellis Sports on the Voice America Network. I'm in Phoenix, living like it matters. It's Dr. King's birthday. I want to thank you, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., for all you did for me, including willing to risk your life so that I one day might enjoy life in the United States of America like everybody else. Also, I got to take time out. I got a phone call yesterday. I appreciated the phone call. Didn't like the reason for the call. I got a phone call yesterday from one of my heroes as I played football at The Ohio State University. It was a young man there. There's more than one Griffin. Archie, of course, is the greatest of all time college football player, the only one with 2 Heisman trophies. But he had a brother named Ray Griffin, still has a brother named Ray Griffin, who, of course, was an extremely good football player. And a man that I looked up to and admired the way he handled himself and played football. And Griff, as we call him, gave me a call yesterday to let me know that former Ohio State defensive back coach, Dick Walker, had passed away. Coach Walker had gotten into a car accident, as I believe it is, in Las Vegas, Nevada. He was hit by a person older than he. Coach Walker had lived on Earth for a few years, and an elderly person hit him, and his quality of life had diminished from that accident. I believe he was even known to be paralyzed at that time. But Coach Dick Walker has gone on to heaven. He's in a better place. I'm going to take a couple seconds to honor him with a moment of silence. And I'm back. Coach Dick Walker, thank you so much, Coach. Love you, man. God bless you. I'll see you in heaven. I get a chance to play for you when I get up there. Coach Walker, of course, was going to be the secondary coach when I was being recruited at the Ohio State University. He moved on, went on to coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, won 2 Super Bowl rings, but I didn't get that. But he is the man that was there when Jack Tatum was there. And, of course, we know about Jack Tatum. From that point on, everybody's been trying to just take people out like Jack did. They say like Mike, it's like Jack, and Jack did his thing. So I believe right now up in heaven, you got Coach Hayes, you got Jack Tatum, and you got Coach Walker. Man, Buckeyes having a great day. You know all the things we did beating Michigan in basketball this weekend, but we won't go there. But let me ask you, I got my man Anthony Gento on the line calling me from London. Anthony, of course, can be listened to and watched on YouTube. Anthony, there were some great football games. In fact, they're trying to say this may go down as the greatest weekend in playoff football in the history of the National Football League. Do you think the games were that good? I certainly think they were.
That was some good football to watch. I tell you, we enjoyed all the games, and that Seattle game, part of me wishes that they'd been able to go into overtime. But that was great.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, when you watch that Seattle football game, I heard one of the guys make a few comments. And for me, I'm not so sure I don't agree with him. And, you watched it, and you watched Atlanta, and you watched them kind of, the air kind of come right out of their balloon. And I sat there watching the game with my daughter, and I said to my daughter, at halftime, Russell Wilson's going to win this game. Seattle's going to win this game at halftime. And I think they were down by 20, 21 points at halftime. And I just didn't feel confident enough to think that Atlanta, sometimes in football, and I don't know where this comes from, but sometimes in football, the conservatism that was never there for some reason or another, you get your creativity just goes out the window. And it's okay. Yeah. It's okay to run the ball to conserve the clock, in your terms, because the clock, you're conservative because now you're running time out because it takes more. The clock doesn't stop when you run the ball. So, so to your benefit, you're manipulating the clock, if you will. But I don't, the conservative running should not be considered conservative. First of all, I want to say that. You have more options. When you run the ball, you put the ball in one person's hand. Everybody knows where the football is, and now all 11 people can converge on that person. I understand that when you pass the ball, your creativity now and, design of this pass play, every eligible receiver is a potential recipient of the football, and you don't necessarily know where the quarterback's going to throw. So that's where, there's more options in the creativity in the passing game as opposed to the running game. But them big fellas up front are supposed to open up some holes. But all I want to do is I just want to ask you this. When you looked at, the Atlanta Falcons, did you feel as if it's going to happen to them again? They're going to lose again. I mean, they just seem to have lost momentum, and the Seahawks seem to have all the momentum. So even as time went on, and even though the Seahawks didn't get that score they were looking for just before halftime, they let the clock run out. Now, I think there were some people who were very upset with Pete Carroll and the Seahawks and felt as if, they're destined to lose. They can't even get a playoff before the halftime. But did you think at halftime when that happened to them that the game was over, or did you think, man, they still could possibly come back?
I thought they could come back and make something happen because, teams make adjustments. It's been happening through the season. Teams make adjustments. The coaches do a great job. And as you said, the other team, their game plan, it kind of changes a bit because they got that cushion. And before you know it, a play here, a play there, a couple of 3 and outs, a lucky bounce that way, or an unlucky bounce, and it changes, and that's exactly what happened. And the Falcons, they were lucky. They were real lucky.
Yeah, and sometimes people say they'd rather be lucky than good. But I will tell you, good will win more times than luck will. And I think that's what the key is that, you know, they were better than they were good. I will say this. I will give them, because, you know, luck also happened, if you want to say that. You know, that timeout that Pete Carroll called, I could not believe on national TV that Pete Carroll looked back at that referee and wanted to ask him, was he crazy or who the hell called timeout? Pete, you're on television. We zoomed, you called the timeout, and then he's going to turn back to that referee. Now, that's the same guy that said that he didn't know that Reggie Bush's mom had this big old house out there in California. You know that? So, and I know a little bit about that guy. But could you believe, I mean, really, when you saw that, I could not believe it. You know, that was better than the worst flop that I've ever seen in my life. You know, the guys flop and act like, you know, somebody just, you know, killed him.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
But could you believe that Pete Carroll actually was looking at that referee and asked him who called timeout? You know, that was
a Hollywood moment.
Oh, that was definitely a Hollywood moment. I mean, that has to go down as one of the greatest of all time. You know, and there's one thing about this. I have my own opinion about the camera zooming in on coaches anyway. Because for the life of me, if you're talking about the integrity of the game, I don't know why any coach should be permitted to be on the sidelines and communicating with his quarterback and use a tablet to cover his lips. It's like, okay, wait a second. Right. I thought there was no cheating. I thought, you know, Spygate and all that was out the door. Why does the coach have to cover his mouth? But that was a perfect example of why, you know, we need to make sure they don't cover their mouths, because if they'd had to go to the camera, if it was been one of those things where Pete could actually challenge it, it was a good thing that the camera was on him at that time, because he certainly told that referee that he wanted a timeout. So, okay, so going forward, before we go there, let's talk a little bit about, there was there was a couple more very good games, but certainly the Ravens. Wow. Yeah. I mean, the Ravens and Ray Lewis. I mean, how many lives does this man have? I mean, you know, we all know what his back. And listen, I can't cast a stone, because sin, in terms of my life, the way I live my life, sin is sin. So I don't know if that man did or if he didn't do it, but I know what he's been accused to have done. But he's moved on. God has forgiven him. So who am I? I cannot hold anything against him. So I'm just going to say this in terms of his football lives and opportunities. A lot of guys, what will happen is they'll get hurt in that last year, and that'll be it. We would have seen his last appearance on a football field, you know, before the playoffs started, because they wouldn't have made it. But then when he came back, you know, wow, Ray Lewis is still playing football. Now, and here's the thing about it. Ray Lewis is 17 years in the league. Yep. He's as good as some rookie linebackers today. I mean, the man, I saw one play at the sideline. It wasn't like he didn't stop the first down, but he still got there. Yep. I mean, Ray is still, I mean, he has the emotion, he has the physical ability, he has the desire and the passion. I mean, do you really think, or did you really think that Ray would be able to take his team into Denver and beat Peyton Manning? And we know that's such a great story too. But did you think he could go into Denver and beat Peyton Manning?
I tell you this, Ray, I hoped that he could. I knew it was a big task. Going up against, you know, Denver and Peyton Manning, but it was a great show. And let's go back, I didn't think he was going to play in the playoffs. I thought, you know, he's announced his retirement. That's it. But he has been out there on the field, and this team has just, you know, they've got it rolling. They got fortune, they got luck on their side, and I don't know if it's because Ray is bringing that emotion and they're playing for him, but I can't wait for this game next week.
And, you know, it's interesting you say that, because, you know, it's just like, you know, he and Peyton, I mean, Peyton obviously is the quarterback on the offensive side of the ball, and we always call the middle linebacker the quarterback on the defensive side of the ball. And but these are guys that have been able to galvanize the energy, the football intelligence, and the emotion of their players, and get every single bit out of these guys to play for them. And I truly believe that everybody's playing for these guys. And the way it ended. Now I got to, you know, take you down this 25-year road I go down every time this happens. You know, because the Denver, the drive, and the fumble. And just for Denver to lose the game the way they did, I'm telling you, a lot of people may not like this, but for Art Modell and also for Ernest Biner, we would have never been there if it wasn't for Art Modell. I would have never been there. And we as a team would have never been there if it were not for Ernest Biner. But I just felt like that Baltimore Raven team, which was owned by Art Modell before he sold it and passed away and moved it, from Cleveland to, I just felt like that was for him. I felt like that was for them. It was for Ernest, and it was for Art. The way that team lost it last week, I just felt like this. I felt like they had to lose, but it had to be in a way of which it hurt them so bad that they would never forget about it. Because I'm telling you, 25 years ago, I'm still remembering it like it was yesterday. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. We got to take a break. This is going to be our last break, and Anthony and I are going to come back, and we're going to talk about maybe one other game, but we're certainly going to talk about the games this weekend. You listen to Ray Ellis Sports on the Voice America Network. I'm in Phoenix, living like it matters. Got my friend Anthony Gentle on from London. We'll be right back. Happy birthday, Dr. King. Happy birthday.
Your internet flagship station for sports, Voice America Sports.
So Andy Serling packed his bags, left the city, and is enjoying his temporary digs in Saratoga. But that won't stop us from bringing you Playing to Win, the best online handicapping show for serious horse players. Catch Andy and his great lineup of guests every week throughout the month of August on location from the beautiful Saratoga Racecourse. He and his guests are some of the best in the biz. They bring you new insights to making money, and they tell it like it is.
I'm 3-5-1 in this race, but the 3 is very much the one to beat. We're going to completely disagree on this race. I absolutely despise her, especially at 1-2.
And it's anything but the same old horse racing show.
This is a 9-horse field, but really there are 7 donkeys and 2 zebras.
Playing to Win with Andy Serling, a show seriously committed to making more money at the game, but with a personality.
This is a dunce cap horse for me. If this horse wins, next week I got the dunce cap on.
YouBet.com's Playing to Win, presented by the Daily Racing Form. Look for it the day before big race days, mostly Fridays. Find a complete schedule in the Daily Racing Form or click on Playing to Win at YouBet.com.
You may not know all their names, but you certainly know what they did. They helped make this game into what it is today. Now we can do more to help them. The NFL Alumni Association is proud to assist our retired players to help make their lives better today and tomorrow. To learn more, please visit NFLalumni.org.
Your internet flagship station for sports, Voice America Sports.
All right, you hear the music, you know the show. You listen to Ray Ellis Sports on the Voice America Network. I'm in Phoenix, living like it matters. I'll tell you what matters. Dr. King. Thank you so much, Dr. King. I certainly appreciate it. In 1968, I was a 9-year-old boy going to practice to play on an integrated baseball team that when I turned 10, we won the city championship in Canton, Ohio. Thank you, Dr. King. That happened. You had a big part in that happening. And I also want to thank my coach, Arthur Busby, who was a white man who had 3 black players on his team in 1968, and in 1969, we won a city championship for him. So want to thank you. I was a part of that civil rights movement back in the day, and 53 years old on this earth. Thank you. So anyway, let me talk about some things that we can't just forget about that San Francisco Green Bay game. You know, again, you got a young man that just, jumps off the screen in terms of athletic ability. And of course, let me just say, when I was a kid, Anthony, the best player on the football field, whenever you decided to choose teams, the 2 best guys that chose, I'm talking about when I'm like 9, 10, 11, the 2 best guys that normally chose those teams when they split up, they played the quarterback position. And they usually could do everything. They could scramble, run, throw the ball. You know, even if they had to catch the ball, reverse flea flicker, you throw it to them. You know, so I don't understand how the National Football League ever found itself in a position where they wanted the quarterback didn't have the ability to run or scramble or, add another dimension to the game. But how did you like the performance of, and particularly, I don't want people to feel, listen, I understand how it is when you're sick. I've always said this about football, about sports, period. Professional sports, there's no days off. There's no days off. And
Right.
Aaron Rodgers, who I think had a sinus infection. My wife has those things. Those are terrible, terrible.
Right.
And he had a sinus infection, but we've seen Michael Jordan on the basketball court when he's sick. So we know what can happen when you're sick. Miracles can happen. But it was somebody else's day. It was some other person's day that Saturday, that Sunday that was destined. And he wrote about it when he was 10 years old. So what did you think watching the 49ers play?
That was an amazing performance, and Kaepernick, I tell you, he just for a guy that's in his second year, is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, he just Harbaugh looks like a genius now. Because
no, you're right. Go ahead. You're right.
They got to the championship game last year with Smith. And now they're there with Kaepernick. So if they win it or not, hey, he's got two guys that could take him to the championship game.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it. It's like and of all teams for this to happen to, it's something amazing happened. This AFC Championship game is going to be a repeat for the first time since 25 years ago when I was a part of it and we did it. But the San Francisco 49ers, this is the second time in their history that they've had very good quarterbacks this was a little different because in the previous case, one Hall of Famer was replaced by another Hall of Famer. But it appears that in this case, at least the achievement level is about to be matched because he is at the same game. Now, in what fashion they win or lose may make the difference. But certainly two of those coaches made decisions that people second guessed. There were a lot of people that didn't think that it was time for Joe Montana to be, removed from the starting lineup and that Steve Young was to be inserted. Now, Steve Young certainly would have told you that he felt this should have happened prior to that. But Steve is respectful. I'm not sure how the relationship is between the two, but at least when speaking, he's very respectful of Joe Montana. But certainly the San Francisco 49ers is a franchise that finds himself, faced in that situation again with a head coach that has enough gonads, big enough to go ahead and make that decision. So you feel that it was the right decision and you think it'll be better for their team going forward?
Yeah, I think the Niners coaching staff call a different game with Kaepernick because they would bring him into the game when he was a rookie to do exactly what he's doing. We had the Wildcat thing going on and they'd bring him in, he'd run the option and he'd score. So they've kept that in the play calling. But now we've seen that he can throw the ball.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I'm glad you mentioned that. And again, no due respect to you, no disrespect. But, it's interesting that people think when Kaepernick came in before, that was a wildcat. And people say that when Tim Tebow came in before, that was a wildcat.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about it. When it's a quarterback, my understanding, it's not a wildcat. It's just a quarterback lining up in shotgun. When it's a running back or a person that plays a position other than the quarterback position, then it would be perceived as a wildcat. But certainly this is a person that brings another element, a dynamic to the team of which, they don't practice. You only good at what you practice. You got to get repetitions in it. And NFL teams do not practice what we call, a play that gives them ability to option, the option read. Right. He has the option of keeping it, pulling it out, or pitching it to a running back. But let me ask you, because our term, I think, is running down. So, of course, we got the San Francisco 49ers who've already beat the Green Bay Packers. They are going to be playing the Atlanta Falcons. Who you got in that game? I put you on the spot.
I tell you what, I just think if the Niners play how they have been with Kaepernick, they're going to do it. But the Falcons have to make sure they stay in the game and they don't make mistakes.
Okay, and let me just ask you this, because we got about 4 minutes, but I wanted to throw that out there real fast, only because I wanted to, let's say, if we provide a little bit more detail. Do you think that Harbaugh, if something were to happen, if Kaepernick didn't show up that day, was having a bad day at the office, could we see Alex Smith?
I reckon we could. I reckon we could. I don't know how he'll cope because he's not played and been at game speed for a while. And this is the playoffs, but yeah, it's possible.
And do you think that a quarterback is a position like baseball? If a pitcher's not doing well, hey, don't put your ego aside. We're gonna pull you, and there's always tomorrow, or as the rotation allows, you'll be back. It shouldn't be a blow to your ego. Do you think that could be the case, that Harbaugh could say, you know what, listen, I just didn't think the kid was having a good day. I had to pull him because I was trying to win for the football team. He's my starting quarterback. I'll go with him next year. But I just think, listen, if somebody's having a bad, I've always felt that day. You know, you think they can come out of it. And Russell, you know, Wilson, when the Seahawks were having a bad game the first half, it wasn't because he was not throwing good passes or he was having a bad day. What he wasn't doing is he wasn't playing Russell Wilson football. And when those openings were wide open, he wasn't running the ball down the field. But when he did, I think things changed a little bit. Okay, so I kind of think this. Listen, that quarterback, Kaepernick, just has an ability and an element to his game that is hard for you to be able to coach against. And speed does kill. And when you got that option reader, which people are not accustomed to playing that kind of football, and they don't know how to defend against it, and you got secondary people you're trying to get into the game, and all of a sudden he pulls that out, and it's play action. Woo! I think that's going to be tough.
Yeah.
I like San Francisco. I like San Francisco, and in saying that, I'm going to move on because now I want to talk about that other game, and that's, of course, the Ravens.
Yeah.
And when you Ravens and the Patriots, and that's that rematch of last year. It hasn't happened like this for 25 years. We were not successful. The old Browns were not successful. But I just think the new Browns, which are the Ravens, I think they're I think it's a little different. I think because, you know, Ray's going to be a part of this story when it ends. What do you think going into that game? You think Tom Brady's just going to be too much for them, or you think the Ravens may, you know, get it done?
Man, these are two teams that know each other, study each other. They've met so many times, regular season and playoffs. I don't know. I wouldn't put any money on the table to say who would win. If we're going to say, hey, the Cinderella story we're looking at is going to be the Ravens. Yeah,
I think Art Modell's going up, and Art's made a deal. He knocked on the door, asked God, "Hey, can I have a conversation with you? Just give me a couple minutes. I need a favor for you. I got some people down there that are mad at me, but they now have accepted the fact that they are the Browns, that the Ravens are the Browns. So can you pull a victory off for me just the one time?" So I think if he's not, I'm asking him to do that for me. I'm asking him to do that for me because listen, Tom's had a chance. Tom had a chance last year. You know, he didn't get it done. But I tell you what, regardless, I think it's going to be some great football. But here's the thing about it. What happens is a lot of times, you know, those playoff games are so good because you're fighting for something so hard. And you give it everything you got. And sometimes I think the Super Bowl is a letdown to the playoffs because the playoffs, what you're trying to do is your goal is to get to the Super Bowl and then win it. But first of all, your goal is to get to the Super Bowl. So you do everything you can. And that's why I asked you the question, do you think that if Harbaugh found himself in a position where Kaepernick was not having a great game, that he might pull the trigger? Because ultimately it's all about getting to that Super Bowl where you can possibly have a chance to bring that Lombardi trophy back into your environment. And I just think that if he had to do that, I think that he might. But I tell you what, there's another interesting twist to this. If the two teams win that I'm picking, I don't think in the history of any professional sports, two brothers have played for the championship. So if we got the Ravens, and if we got the 49ers, we got two brothers, head coaches, playing for a championship. So either way, and I hope they both make it, but I hope at least one of them make it because it's going to be it's going to be hell. The dad's going to be mad because it's going to be a reflection on his coaching ability. You know, the dad, of course, was a good coach. So listen, I want you to be sure to take the time, Anthony, again, to tell people where they can find your show at, where they can see all the great information you bring to people, and you do that on YouTube. And the name of your show again is
Athletic Intelligence.
And again, for those of you out there who do not know this, that's a real accent. It's not fake. He didn't make it up. He's not an actor. He really does live in London, and he really does listen to Voice America Sports, and we certainly appreciate it. You've been listening to Ray Ellis Sports on the Voice America Network. I want to say happy birthday to Dr. King. You did so much for me. You did so much for so many people in this whole wide world that we all say thank you. We love you. God bless you. We hope we're making you proud. We haven't stopped. We're still fighting. And we're glad you're still watching. I got to go. And I want to say, by the way, I'll see you next time, which will be the best time.